More and more, schools are rethinking not just what they teach, but how they build the spaces, programs, and relationships that help students thrive. At Berea College, that commitment runs deep. The work college serves students of high academic promise and limited means. We're talking zero tuition to attend. And important to today's conversation, it's also home to the Hutchins Library, a hub that's as much about community and co-creation as it is about books and databases. In this episode, you'll hear from LaShawn Springer, Director of Inclusive Pedagogy at Macmillan Learning, in conversation with Amanda Peach, Associate Director of Library Services at Berea College. Together, they explore what it looks like to treat librarians as partners in pedagogy, how research skills and student agency go hand in hand, and why a library might just be the most dynamic classroom on campus. And stay tuned to the end for 4 takeaways and practical tips you can use starting today. This is the What and Who of EDU, and I'm handing it off to LaShawn to help us put some pedagogy in practice.
Welcome to the What and Who of EDU, where we bring you insights from the leading educators, researchers, and innovators shaping the future of teaching and learning. I'm your host, LaShawn, Director of Inclusive Pedagogy at Macmillan Learning. We've been exploring together teaching and learning best practices from schools, colleges, and universities that fall outside the archetype, intentionally designed to meet the full needs of their student population. I'm honored today to be joined by Amanda Peach, Associate Director of Library Services at Berea College in Berea, Kentucky. Berea occupies a unique space in higher education. It was the first integrated co-educational college in the South, and it has not charged students tuition since 1892. Berea College is also one of only 10 schools designated a work college, employing every one of its students across the campus. And it is home to the Bell Hooks Institute, where Hooks was a distinguished professor and resided until she passed away in 2021. What I've shared is just a glimpse into campus, but who better to help us understand more about the community than Amanda? Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me. There's so much I want to talk to you about, but before we jump into learning more about Berea, I'd love to learn more about you and your journey to working in libraries.
So I majored in sociology as an undergraduate, and that field really appeals to me for lots of reasons. And so I initially imagined that I was going to be a sociology professor one day. But during my senior year, I found out that I was pregnant. And with the reality of being a single parent descending on me, I had to quickly change a direction. My faculty advisor was very real with me. She talked to me about the realities of becoming a professor. I'd probably be adjuncting for years with little stability. And I knew that wasn't something I could do with a child on the way. So I briefly tried nursing school. And when I say briefly, I mean I didn't make it through my first day because I thought it would offer more security. I called my best friend who happened to be in library school, and she suggested I consider it. I thought, well, I've always loved to read. Why not? And so I applied and I completed my degree in under 2 years and found a career that truly fit. But ironically, I've since learned that librarians do not have time to read all day or really ever until you're off. But it doesn't matter. I've loved the work ever since. I started in public libraries and then transitioned to academic libraries in 2009.
What a journey. It's always interesting to hear in life we have all these pivots that we need to make, and somehow in the moment, the pivot may not feel like what we want to do, but then you end up in a career that feels like so fulfilling for you. So for those unfamiliar with Berea, what do you usually share with them about the school?
There are lots of ways that people talk about this unique status that we have as a work college, but I guess one of the things I'll say to people is it's the best education that money can't buy. Or if you can afford an education of this quality, you can't attend here because we only accept students with high academic promise but limited means. And that gives, traditionally underserved people a pathway through higher education. So I think that's really beautiful about it. But also literally every single department on campus, whether it's the farm or the president's office or the library, has student colleagues working with us. And That means many things, like they keep you on your toes because they're younger and they know things that you don't know, and they bring that unique perspective, but also they help add to the relevance of the campus. In the library, that means like they inform maybe kinds of materials we should collect based on their interests and needs. So it's a place where students don't just work, but they also, I think, have a large impact on the way the school is constantly changing and evolving.
One of the questions I was going to ask you is how all of these pieces come together in terms of it being one of the first integrated co-educational schools in the South, being a working school. It's also very specific in terms of regionally thinking of it located in the Appalachian Mountains. And you've given us a peek and insight into what that means in terms of the type of learning community that it engenders. And also, I love hearing you talk about what kind of young person you think is at the school. I'm wondering, though, whether you think that's the type of young person that's attracted to Berea or whether there's something special happening there that, like, then cultivates that in your young people, or they come ready knowing that this is an environment where they want to contribute.
Yeah. I do think that it's actually the students. I mean, I do believe that working here and living in this area is a really powerful experience. But the thing about our students is if they are smart enough and accomplished enough to get into Berea, then they often have the opportunity in their home states to attend state or regional universities for free. Many schools now will let students attend for free based on their GPA. And so students have options. They're not just coming here because it's free, because they could go for free at home. And I'd like to think it's about the agency they'll have here and the unique climate. This campus is not as diverse as it was when it was founded, for sure, but it is more diverse, I would say, than most schools of higher ed in Kentucky. And I think people are drawn to that. There's a lot of curiosity that brings students here. Many of our students end up studying abroad, also for free or mostly free. We have a wonderful internship program. So students are coming here because they want opportunities that maybe they couldn't be sure they would get elsewhere. We do talk about that sometimes. We're like, how are we going to keep competing with state schools who can give that away for free? And it's these other things, it's the other parts of the experience.
Yeah, when they graduate, who are they on the other side?
They're so amazing. We have so many accomplished and grateful alums. Like our alums are a large part of the support network for our continued success, right? Like we do receive, I mean, we do have a pretty impressive endowment, but ultimately, you can't just live off that forever, right? You need philanthropy, and alumni donations are an important part of our success. Even while students are attending here, they give back. There are students who receive a paycheck of pretty modest amount, and even though they only make what I think other people would think is not enough, right? They still manage to give part of it back. They are just invested in the continued success of this place. So yeah, I think we're graduating people who are proud of where they've come from here, which makes sense. Many of them are also very proud of where they came from before they arrived here. When you ask a student where they're from, especially if they're from around this area, Appalachia, the first thing they'll tell you is like the name of the county they're from. Like they have a real like place identity that they're proud of. And then when they leave, they are from Knox County and they went to Berea, right? Like it becomes a part of that place identity, which I think is really cool. We hear from them after the fact that they believe that they were better prepared than their peers at other institutions, other private or public institutions. We've surveyed our alums and the alums of those places to ask how they felt prepared for work and life after college. And our students consistently say that they were better prepared, which is really cool. And not only because they're not encumbered by lots of student debt, but because going through the work program gives them lots of skills that are useful in all parts of their lives after. I don't know. They're just amazing.
One of the things that I think's been really important that you've mentioned is that, of course, students who are there have plenty of other opportunities to think about other colleges that they could attend because these are students who are top of their class, top of their schools, who have plenty of academic achievements. And also, it is true that in terms of the price, the cost of college and universities at this point in time, that really is a hindrance for many young people. And so the fact that Berea is able to offer the type of community it does, and not charge students tuition. I don't want to skip over that fact because I think that is really important in terms of thinking about educational attainment and equity.
It really is rare for sure. So, as you mentioned, we're only one of 10. And actually, among those 10 work colleges, not all of them provide 100% free tuition like we do. We call the paycheck they get actually a scholarship payment because ultimately that's what they're receiving. So, we really are unique. But even still, like you said, students have choices because they're so bright. And so they could go some other place where they don't have to work and they could just go for free tuition. And so they choose to come here and work. Like they know that's a part of it.
So let's talk libraries because I think libraries are such fascinating places. And I'm located in New York and I'm very close to the large Brooklyn Library. And I also love attending my local libraries as well. And the way it is such a community hub to not just connect people to each other, but also connect people to social services, I think has always been something that I've been very uniquely aware of. So how do you describe the purpose and the function of libraries?
So I have a deep appreciation for public libraries. That is where I began. I was a children's librarian doing story times for little people. And so I think that is where I had heard this phrase that public libraries were for their communities from cradle to grave, but I don't know that I really understood it until I was in a room full of tiny babies on laps being read to. It was so powerful and gave me such a strong respect for, yeah, how public libraries serve their communities. But I would say that there are lots of parallels here at Hutchins Library. Even though we're an academic library, we see ourselves as the heart of campus. Outside of my office, actually, our carpet was designed to look like an EKG readout, a nod to the idea that we are the heartbeat of campus. And so, yeah, academic libraries have traditionally been about being repositories of information, lots of books and scholarly journals, but they're more than that today. And we have a library of things where we provide board games and hammocks and pots and pans for cooking because our students do need breaks from academic demands and they don't have the money to buy all of those things, nor should they for sustainability purposes. Why wouldn't we just share? We host student-led events like Dungeons and Dragons and craft nights to help build community. So yeah, Hutchins Library, like public libraries, is a third space, a place on campus where our students, staff, and faculty can come and just be themselves without having to spend money because there are alternatives around campus.
I love that you describe libraries as third spaces. It's amazing that you're able to provide that for your students at such a pivotal time so that they also understand what it means to create like those types of spaces wherever they end up and want to engender that type of community wherever they go.
Yeah, it makes me feel warm and fuzzy when I walk around campus and they're collaborating on one of our screens. They're projecting up their assignment, working on it together, or they're scribbling notes on a whiteboard, or they're playing cards, like has nothing to do with academics. They're just enjoying each other's company. They're napping. I love to see a student napping. They don't need me to feel that way, but I do. I feel so warm and like just full of love of the community of the space. Yeah.
Listen, some of my best naps were in my science library when I was in college. The other thing that I think is interesting is just a couple of years ago, you co-authored a piece following a longitudinal study of undergraduate students' information literacy at Berea. And of course, we continue to be immersed in conversations around media literacy, as we think about disinformation, misinformation. Of course, we're thinking about generative AI and literacy in that area. I think we're seeing what I consider to be a resurgence of support for libraries, especially pushes to support like one's local library. So let's talk more generally about the library's role in this conversation around literacy in general. And then if there's anything specifically about what prompted this study or your findings.
So libraries play a role in literacy from the beginning. Free access to books and audiobooks and whatever else will get a person excited about reading. In an academic library, I think our focus is more about information literacy and media literacy because library science, it is an academic discipline like others. We spend a lot of time thinking about that. Librarians are experts in locating and evaluating and using information. And so we bring lots of valuable insight, I think, to conversations about how students engage with the information landscape. Our profession is supported by robust professional organizations like the Association of College and Research Libraries. And they spend a lot of time thinking about this as well, and even produce like frameworks to help guide our work. You go into one academic library, people should be familiar with the framework, should be as familiar with it in New York as they are in California. And I think that's really cool and important because, gosh, we really need that tool in this rapidly evolving information landscape, which really just feels like a tsunami some days. The world has changed, and authority isn't what we thought of it as when I first entered the field. It was like anything that's a .edu or a .org is trustworthy, and or anything that's a .gov is trustworthy. But also, if somebody has a doctor in front of their name or a PhD at the end of their name, they are experts, and we don't really have to interrogate that too much. But that's not really true anymore in a world of disinformation and the like, about the fact that authority can be contextual, that people can be the experts of their lived experiences, which makes sense. That, again, having credentials does not make you a legitimate source of authority, but also, more importantly, like that students are creators of information as well and should be participating in the both creation and distribution of information. Our students are coming to us from different backgrounds, and we can't know what they know until they arrive. And so for a long time, I mean, for 10 years, we were having them complete something called the Heads Research and Information Practices Survey before they arrived. And then we were using that data to determine if they had gaps in their information literacy knowledge. And it varied pretty widely about how much they did. And so we were giving them all a letter at the end of their first week, usually on campus, letting them know what we had determined about that based on their answers. And then we were providing interventions, like workshops that they could attend to address those sort of gaps in knowledge. But a lot about it was problematic. The first part being that it was based on this sort of outdated framework, the framework from 2000, when there wasn't deep things like deep fakes or echo chambers the way they are now. The framework that our interventions were built on was no longer really valid for the way information is being created now. And then also problematic was that our general education program was changing, and so the spaces where we used to be able to have an inroad with students to invite them into these interventions was eroding and quickly. So we were testing all of these students before they arrived, and then we were hoping that we could get them to engage outside of class without credit, like they weren't getting anything for it in these workshops. And so that premise was deeply flawed from the beginning, but it's okay. We did learn from it lots of things. It gave us a chance to reevaluate sort of why are we using this tool? So first thing we had to face was that we were using a tool that wasn't even being used in our field anymore. But then we also weren't really able to reach students because why would they come to a workshop, again, that they weren't getting any credit for? It was not particularly successful. And so the good thing about that study was it did reveal that it was probably time for us to pivot. And I was lucky enough to partner with a computer science faculty member to write that, because I really like qualitative studies. I'm not great with statistics. And so I needed her brilliance to help crunch many years worth of numbers. And I was glad that we did, because it really did back up what I had thought. And suddenly I had all the reason to move on and propose something different. Every first year student will get to meet with us and be given some tools to help them appraise and evaluate information, because not every professor is going to bring in their students to the library, but we want every student to meet a librarian. We want to be their librarian. We want them to know that we're here for them and we're one of many support systems on campus. There's counseling services if you need it. There's academic affairs if you need it. There's the library. I think the good thing about turning away from the way we were doing things is it pushed us to find a new way, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like we're gonna need to check back in with you in a couple of years on another study then to see how this new initiative is going. One thing that I've been thinking a lot about is just in terms of when students first like venture into the library. Sometimes it's when they have that like first big paper or that first big research project. And I think the idea of research can be so intimidating for students, especially in that first year as they're transitioning from high school to college. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more about how you and your team are supporting students
So, like most academic libraries, we offer something called the one-shot instruction session. These are done at the request of faculty. So, professors invite us into their classrooms to introduce students to the library's resources and to some foundational research skills like how to define your search terms and building effective search strings and navigating our databases. This is valuable because we do get a chance to see the students and they see us. But the sessions are limited in their usefulness because you only have students probably for an hour and you're aiming to teach them everything you know about research. That's not possible. And you're aiming like for the middle, trying to meet a wide range of students where they're at without the time to really tailor the instruction session. So sometimes you feel like Vanna White, like you're just pointing to, and this is where you'll hit enter after you put in your search term. But then we do other things, I think, to really support that. Prior to the sessions, we often build libguides. These are customized web pages that we make where we curate specific sources for either that class focus or for a specific assignment. And so the students are going to forget a lot about what we said because, again, we're shoving as much as we can into an hour, right? And so after they leave, they can refer back to these pages and they'll have the resources that they need. But probably the most important thing that comes out of those sessions is that they get a face-to-face connection with us. And so in these meetings, sort of the thing we begin with and end with is this idea that they can make a one-on-one appointment with us. We provide tailored, personalized research consultations. They take a half an hour to an hour. And so they schedule these with us. And from the beginning, this is helpful because it forces them to articulate what their need is. So maybe they hadn't even thought about what they were going to do, and suddenly they have to say it. And then when they tell us that, we treat that, whatever information they give us, we treat it like we're writing our own paper, frankly. So we go and do a deep dive into the resources that we think are helpful beyond sort of the introductory database academic search complete that they may have met in high school, right? We have specialized databases and specialized encyclopedias and specialized this and that, right? And then when we meet them, we don't just hand these sources off to them. We sit down with them and we talk through the sources we found and we look through them one at a time and see if they're a match. And if they're not, then we keep looking with them. But we're basically modeling the research process for them in that moment. And then when they leave with stuff, they either leave with like print books in hand that they're going to check out or with an email that has a list of the databases we looked at, the keywords we used. But also, I think more importantly, they know that there is another adult on campus who's invested in their success and that they can come back to if they need more help later. And they often do. You become their librarian and you might see them every semester for the rest of their time here. So it's not uncommon when I'm at graduation, commencement, and I see students walking down the aisle towards us because we clap them in as they're getting ready to graduate, that maybe I don't remember their name, but I remember their research topics. I'm like, oh, yeah, dance therapy. Good job. She's graduating. So it's really cool. That's the most useful thing I think we do. And we all feel it. It's our version of office hours, but then some. Because we are not regular teaching faculty, we don't have a group of students assigned to us unless they work for us as student colleagues, work with us. So this is our way to know students better.
I can recall how wonderfully patient my librarians were with me when I first went to college. And I remember just like walking into the library and just even like the grandiose nature of an academic library can feel intimidating. And so to know that there are folks who are so personable, who are so knowledgeable, who are ready to support you in your endeavors is really just a wonderful thing.
So I had a bad undergraduate library experience. I remember walking into my academic library and asking for help. I went up to the reference desk because I figured that's where you would ask for help. And I was pointing to an assignment that said that I had used specific resources. And I was asking the librarian on duty where to find that. And she said to me, I'm not going to do your homework for you. I was just like, wow. And right then I was just like, don't be this person. And then when I became a librarian, first thing was, this is so cool. I get to do this every day. And second was, okay, don't be that librarian. And actually, I don't think I've ever encountered a librarian like that outside of that person. We are no longer like gatekeepers hoarding information. We really want to put it in the hands of people.
Earlier, we talked about a paper that you co authored with your computer science colleague, but also you mentioned that there are instances where you've been able to do some co authoring with students as well. So many undergraduates never have an opportunity to co-author a paper to be published in a journal. So I'd love to hear about the ways in which you're supporting students in their intellectual development as like researchers in that way and as authors.
The good thing about libraries is that they're very practical. One of the ways that we're practical is that in our state, we have a peer-reviewed library journal that is very inviting to students. Like me, I think that journal appreciates the unique perspective students bring, and they are more than happy to work with me and my student colleagues. And so every year, I ask students, are any of you planning on becoming librarians or going into academia? And if they say yes to any of those things, then I offer to publish with them or to present with them. And somebody takes me up on that every single year. I can't remember a time in the last 10 years when I haven't published with a student or presented with them at a conference. They appreciate the invitation into the secret, mysterious world of academia, but also like just practically the line on their CV. Like, our students are coming to us without maybe some of the social capital that their peers at wealthier institutions might have. Who's going to open the doors for them? And every single year, students have done really cool and innovative things, whether they've suggested ways for us to maybe diversify our collections of materials, or maybe ways to better serve other students, or whatever they work on as part of their special projects in our department. Then we can write about that and present about it together. And I appreciate the chance to also reflect on their good work. It's really fun. And to be their colleague, like we sit down together and work through a draft, just like I do with my professional colleagues when I write with them. We debate the use of this example over that. We literally proofread line by line. And yeah, to leave the work program here, not with just like transferable soft skills like time management and communication, but then also with some really cool achievements under their belt. I have one student that not only did I write an article with her, but we also wrote a book chapter together. And then we presented at 3 conferences together. Not every undergraduate student can do that. That kind of stuff is happening all over campus. We have a really strong undergraduate research program where, again, our students partner with faculty to do really cool research. So I think that's one of the really exciting things about Berea.
Yeah. How powerful to get an invitation like that from an academic mentor. You mentioned faculty, and of course, I don't want to leave them out of the conversation. You talked about some of the other centers that exist on campus. And so, just curious to hear how your team is supporting faculty, how your team might also be supporting or doing collaborative work with some of the other centers on campus as well.
Sure. So we do provide research consultations to faculty as well. Our faculty know how to research, right? They've got where they are for a reason, but they may have gone to like larger institutions, big state universities, maybe R1s that had different kinds of resources. We are a small liberal arts school. So I will often meet with faculty just to introduce them to what we have available for them and to offer them support. And this is especially useful, I think, to new faculty before they go for tenure while they're trying to get together their portfolio. But then we also collaborate with faculty on creating assignments. We design assignments together to set students up for success when doing research. And we get to share our perspectives on information literacy with faculty who are experts in a different field, right? And some really cool things have happened out of it. Perhaps my favorite is I'm really into zines. Zine culture meant a lot to me as a teenager, and zines are enjoying an amazing resurgence. I worked with the Women and Gender Studies department, sociology, the general studies program, all sorts of disciplines across campus to do zine workshops with their students where they have to reinterpret their research visually as a zine, and then they will dedicate them to the library. We get to put them in our collection, which is really cool. And so then that serves as like I guess it's a kind of open education pedagogy sort of thing where the next cohort of students can look at their peers' work and perhaps build upon it. The students teach each other over time, right? That's perhaps my favorite thing that I've got to do with faculty as these zine workshops.
I love that because also you just spoke to a pedagogical best practice, also in terms of providing other modalities for students to be able to demonstrate what they know and what they've learned. And I think that's another thing that students have been asking of us in this evolving landscape is for us to think beyond traditional means of here's a test that tests what you have learned.
Yeah. I think it's really cool. They value the chance to make something be on a paper that only their professor is going to read, right? Like there's something you get to share with the world beyond your professor, and that really speaks to them. And that sort of using multiple modalities trickled over into my work as a labor supervisor. So labor supervisors at Berea are considered practical educators. Our students don't get academic credit for working for us. And so one of my favorite things to do with students is I might assign them a database because we have 150 of them, right? And they're supposed to learn how to use them effectively over time. And we may have them do like a database speed dating where they have 3 minutes to pitch their databases to the rest of their student workers. It reminds me, I was listening to this podcast, your podcast earlier, and somebody was talking about campaigning for an answer. It feels like that, right? So you have to defend why this database is the one to use. But then also, I've had them make a 3-minute training video on how to use this for somebody who's never used it before. And so they'll use screencast software to do that. And by them making the video, you have to know something about something if you're going to train others on how to use it, right? So they have to become pretty well versed in it to be able to distill it into 3 minutes. But then, yes, it can be passed along to their other student colleagues as a training tool. And when I tell them we're going to do this, sometimes they groan. But then we have a then we'll have a watch party where there'll be popcorn and candy, and we'll vote for the best one, and the best one gets a little prize, and people get really excited and into it. There are so many ways to learn, and they appreciate being invited to use their creativity and a vision beyond the Times New Roman double-spaced 10-page paper. So
Oh, yes. One thing I wanted to make sure that we fully uncovered is this idea of library science being its own discipline and that librarians are governed and guided by associations that have their own frameworks. So just wanted to, if there are a couple of others that were top of mind that you think really inform your practice, wanted to make sure that I gave space to those as well.
So I guess the framework for information literacy from ACRL is the framework, but then there are these 6 frames within it. These are hotly debated and take a long time to be codified. Although I'm sure there's another one in the works, frankly, I think if there were anything I wanted to tell folks listening who are not librarians is that your librarian colleagues on your campuses are excited to collaborate with you and to support you, but they also have their own expertise to bring to the conversation. And so I think that the best thing that could happen for me is to have a faculty member excited to collaborate with me.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda. This has been such a fun conversation. I think libraries are so interesting. I'm in New York and like I look at the diversity of people who come through the library and the things that they're coming for. Some people may be borrowing, to your point, podcast equipment. Other people are there looking for information around language services. Other people are looking for information around like voting. Other people are looking for a particular book. Other people are looking for audio. I just love the way that you are supporting these young budding intellectual scholars on Berea's campus and the ways in which, their contributions to the world are definitely a result partially of the adult mentors that they run into during their undergraduate experience. That is all the time we have for today, but I'm so thankful to Amanda for joining us and to all of you for listening. As always, before we officially close, I did want to share a few takeaways for us to collectively consider. First, the invitation matters. Amanda mentioned reaching out to her student workers to invite them to pursue a research project, co-author papers that have been published in journals, and present at conferences with her. Her students become her colleagues as they work through drafts together and prepare their presentations. In doing so, she supports these young scholars as they build their portfolios, and she makes research accessible. She recognizes that the idea of approaching a professor or mentor to pursue research may be intimidating for students, and in some instances, that students may not recognize that's even an option available to them. She takes the guessing and the wondering out of it by extending the invitation. Second, we all need third spaces, and that includes our students on campus. It is true that third spaces are rapidly disappearing, and though the theories as to why abound, it remains that third spaces are an important place for people to connect and have been linked to helping students feel a sense of belonging and a sense of identity outside themselves. And there perhaps is no better place to fulfill that need in a community than the library. Hutchins Library takes that role seriously, and I hope and know all of your libraries do too. Of course, the library is the intellectual commons of campus, but they also provide opportunities for students to check in with each other, to borrow a board game or two, to test out the new 3D printer, borrow some DJ or podcast equipment, or as Amanda mentioned, just rest their eyes and breathe for 1 second before the rest of the day's responsibilities come rushing back in. Third, there is no denying that information literacy is an important skill set for our students, and we have a responsibility to ensure they are equipped with the skills and tools to be thoughtful and engaged consumers of media of all types. Amanda and her colleagues have partnered with professors and other centers across campus to deliver a series of workshops and trainings to support students' information literacy, but they also continue to think of ways to partner with faculty and students, whether through one-on-ones or other means. So this is your cue to reach out to your librarian to do the same. And the last is a challenge for all of us. Berea does not charge its students tuition and is a work college. That has opened the door for many of their students to be able to pursue higher education. We recognize that not every school has an endowment to support that type of initiative, but we must remain committed to educational access and attainment for students and be innovative and bold in the ways we do our part to ensure that remains a reality for any young person, for any student who seeks to attend college. If you've enjoyed today's episode, leave us a voicemail at 512-765-4688 and share your thoughts. You might just be featured on a future episode. And check out the links in our show notes for more information. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. It helps more educators join the conversation. I'm your host, LaShawn Springer, and I'll catch you next time on the What and Who of EDU.